For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 5326, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 643 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 5326. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 5326, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Departments of Commerce and Justice, Science, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read for the first time. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Wolf, and the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fatah, each will control 30 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia. 1 minute. Committee is not in order. Would those on either sides of the committee please take your conversations off the floor so committee business can be conducted? Once again, would you please take conversations off the floor? It's better. Committee is now in order. The gentleman from Virginia may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I yield myself at such time I may use. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to begin consideration of H.R. 5326, making appropriations for fiscal year 2013 for Commerce, Justice, Science, and related agencies. The bill provides funding for programs whose impact ranges from the safety of people in their homes and communities to the farthest reaches of space. The bill before the House today reflects a delicate balancing of needs and requirements. We have drafted what I consider a responsible bill for FY 2013 spending levels for the departments and agencies under the subcommittee's jurisdiction. We've had to carefully prioritize the funding in this bill and make hard choices about how to spend scarce revenue. I want to thank Chairman Rogers for supporting us with a fair allocation and helping us to move the bill forward. I also want to thank the ranking member, Mr. Fatah, who has been an effective and valued partner and a colleague, and I'm grateful. I appreciated his principled commitment and his understanding of the programs in the bill. I also like to thank the members of the subcommittee for their help and assistance, and also Congressman Norman Dix, the ranking member of the full committee. I want to recognize the subcommittee staff, including our clerk, Mike Ringler, Leslie Albright, Stephanie Myers, Diana Simpson, Colin Samples, Scott Samus, and also Derek Newby and Bob Bonner from the minority staff for their work in preparing the bill before us today. I also want to recognize a number of the majority and minority associate staff members, which I will insert at the record at this time, all of their name and the offices that they are connected with. The bill totals $51.1 billion in discretionary spending, a reduction of 3.1% below the current fiscal year, and 1.4% below the President's request. Since the beginning of the 112th Congress, the committee has cut $13.2 billion, reducing the total amounts of the CGS bill by over 20% over the 3 fiscal years. We have focused limited resources on the most critical areas, fighting crime and terrorism, including a new focus preventing and investigating cyber attacks, and boosting U.S. competitiveness and job creation by investing in science, exports, and manufacturing. For the Department of Commerce, the bill includes $7.7 billion, an increase of $96 million above FY12. The bill makes critical investments in manufacturing export promotion, and job creation, including a task force and an EDA grant program to incentivize U.S. companies to bring their manufacturing and services activity back to the United States, particularly back to the U.S. from China. For NIST, the bill includes $830 million, including $128 million for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, MEP, program, and $21 million for an advanced manufacturing competitive research program to make the American manufacturing sector a source of job growth. The bill also makes critical investments in weather forecasting and disaster preparedness to save lives and protect property, including funding above the President's request for the National Weather Service operations and for tsunami preparedness. Also included is an increase of $126 million for the weather satellite acquisition, including the full amount requested for the new JPSS satellite. This funding is necessary to better protect Americans from the natural disasters such as tornadoes, hurricanes, and tsunamis. Just look at what we've seen in the Midwest this year, and Kansas and Alabama and places like that. Also with regard to snowstorms and drought. Science. The primary area of focus in the bill this year is scientific research and innovation and competitiveness. Investments in scientific research are key to long-term economic growth and job creation. The bill includes $7.3 billion for the National Science Foundation, an increase of $299 million or 4.3% above FY12 for basic research and science education. This funding will go toward the types of research that will keep America's economy strong by setting the groundwork for the development of new technologies. Developing a well-educated STEM workforce is also critical to America's competitiveness. More than $1 billion is provided throughout the bill for science education, including $876 million for NSF to improve the quality of science education. NASA, the bill includes $17.6 billion, including funding above the aggregate request to keep the development schedule for the Orion crew vehicle and heavy lift rocket. Commercial crew development is funded at $500 million, consistent with the current authorization and the report accompanying the House budget resolution. To find the fast and safest and most cost-effective means of achieving a U.S. capability for access to the International Space Station, the bill directs NASA to winnow the commercial partners and advance the schedule for moving to traditional government procurement methods. Continuing on the current path runs a high risk of failure by one or more companies receiving a government subsidy similar to what we saw last year on Solyndra, and leaving the taxpayer with no tangible benefits in exchange for a substantial investment. We do not need a space Solyndra. And I say to members on both sides of the aisle, we have heard Solyndra thrown away around. We do not need a space Solyndra. We have received letters from Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan, and James Lovell endorsing the committee's approach to commercial crew as, quote, reasonable and appropriate, end of quote. According to GAO, we have invested $100 billion in the station, so we need to develop our own capability to get our astronauts up there to use it quickly rather than relying on the Russians and paying the Russians. The bill also includes $570 million, which is $18.4 million above the request for aeronautics research. Aerospace is a pillar of the American manufacturing sector and one of the leading exports, and an industry that creates thousands of jobs in America. This investment will boost our aviation competitiveness so America continues to be number one. The bill includes $5.1 billion for NASA science programs, including $1.4 billion for planetary science. This amount restores cuts in the President's request that would have inhibited progress on all planetary science goals, including flagship missions to Mars and Europa. For the Department of Justice, the bill includes $27.1 billion, $11 million above the current level. The top mission priority of the Justice Department is defending national security from both internal and external threats. The bill includes $8.3 billion, an increase of $148 million for the FBI, including an increase of $23 million to prevent and combat cyber intrusions. Director Mueller has predicted that cyber will soon overtake terrorism as the Bureau's #1 threat. The increase will be the first step in building a nationwide capability for cyber investigations and complements the other cyber initiatives under consideration in the House. The bill restores funding for the National Gang Intelligence Center, which the President wanted to terminate. Every district in this country has violent gangs running throughout your districts, from MS-13 to many other groups. And if you've been down along the border and see, many of the gangs in Mexico have operations up here. So to shut that down and terminate it at the very time, this is a major threat to the country. And it also provides an additional funding for FBI Safe Street task forces. Now is not the time to retreat in an effort to combat the growing gang problem, not only on the border, but throughout the country. Bureau of Prison Operations are funded at the requested level of $6.8 billion, an increase of $269 million above FY12, to activate newly constructed prisons and ensure safe and secure federal prison facilities in light of, unfortunately, continued population growth. This bill includes $1.85 billion for justice programs that provide grants to states, localities, and nonprofits. Despite the reduction, the bill prioritizes proven high-priority programs, including justice assistance grants, SCAP, and the administration was at 70 on SCAP. We are at 165. Missing and exploited children programs and DNA grants. The bill includes funding for prescription drug monitoring grants, and I want to give a lot of credit to Chairman Rogers for his effort here, and also a significant increase in DEA's tactical diversion squads to address our nation's fastest growing drug problem, prescription drug abuse. Funding for violence against women for victims of trafficking is increased above the current level and above the President's request. There's more money in here for violence against women than this administration put. We recently marked the 5th anniversary of the shootings at Virginia Tech. And following this terrible tragedy, Congress passed a bill to improve the National Instant Background Check Systems, NICS, a critical tool for keeping firearms out of the hands of prohibited persons. But the NICS is only as effective as the state database on which it relies. This bill includes $12 million to improve NICS record, $7 million more than the 2012 request. Finally, we are asking the Office of Inspector General to do a follow-up review of the Justice Task Force that looked at cases affected by flawed FBI lab practices in 1990. A new OIG review is necessary next step to ensure that prosecutors follow through on task force findings and that defendants' rights are upheld. No one should get sentenced to jail for life, and when we know that there's information that has not been shared. And so we've had the OIG review and take a look at this. In closing, this is a summary of the bill before us today. It provides increases where needed to maintain, strengthen operation of critical law enforcement. It carries on the fight against terrorism, crime, and drugs, and provides important increases to boost scientific researches, innovation, and competitiveness. Provides strong support for all the various NASA missions. It represents our best take on matching needs with scarce resources. We have tried hard to produce the best bill we possibly could within the resources we had, and I would hope all members would support the bill and yield back the balance of my time, or reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start out first and foremost by thanking my colleague and the chairman of the subcommittee, Frank Wolf, for continuing to be a model chairman for an appropriations subcommittee. He's a professional, he's principled, and he has involved us, the minority, in every level of the deliberations as we've developed this bill. I'd also like to thank my staff and the committee staff on both the majority and minority side for their work on this bill, along with all those who've had input in it. Now, I start out in this process with a number of priorities. First and foremost, in the science arena, neuroscience, and I want to thank the chairman, and I'll speak about it in some detail in a minute, but for his collaboration and this effort around brain research, manufacturing, and we will talk about the support in this bill, hundreds of millions of dollars to continue to position our country in terms of manufacturing. We now lead the world in manufacturing. We want to continue that and we have real competition that we have to contend with. And then also in the area of steering our young people away from antisocial activity, youth mentoring. And the chairman and the chairman's mark has passed in the subcommittee and full committee, as we bring this bill to the floor, again make significant improvements in our investment around youth mentoring. So let me start with the Department of Commerce. There are healthy funding levels increases for research at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and for the NOAA satellite programs, which is so important to our weather forecasting challenges as a nation. In the chairman's mark, he very wisely rejected the proposed cuts that were going to be made in both the technical capabilities and the personnel at the National Weather Service, including air quality and the tsunami warning system and wind profile measurements, which we've already invested tens of millions of dollars in as a nation. The bill provides funding at or near the requested level for the Department of Justice law enforcement agencies, including an increase above the request for the FBI, and to augment its capabilities in terms of cyber investigations and surveillance. I know that all the members of the committee and all of the members of the House understand the very significant challenges that the country faces in terms of cybersecurity, and the chairman has appropriately focused resources in that regard. The bill provides an increase for the Office of Violence Against Women grant programs. Of course, these are programs that we are dealing with the authorization of in a different part of our processes, but are very important in terms of support for women who face abuse. And also there's a small increase for crime victims funded programs. The chairman's mark in the bill as passed from the full committee provides a healthy increase for the National Science Foundation, the world's premier national entity focused on basic scientific research. The bill makes a strong commitment, as the chairman has noted, to NASA science, and also fully funds the James Webb Telescope, makes a significant investment in commercial crew and in space technology. And even though I don't go as far as the chairman, I do support the idea that we need to move as rapidly as possible to this new focus on having American enterprise compete for opportunities to participate fully and at a much more cost-effective level in terms of our space exploration. The bill makes a significant increase in terms of future robotic missions to Mars. And we make a requirement in the language that this be part of a sample return mission as the National Academy of Sciences report indicates. Due in some part to the limits on the allocation, there are a number of areas in the bill which we should try to improve as we move through this process. And we'll hear some of that in the amendment process, and we will do as much as we can in the conference process that will follow. But this bill is, because it's based on the Ryan budget, is less than the Senate counterpart, which was moved out of committee with $731 million higher in its allocation. This will have to be reconciled in this process. And I hope that as we go about that, we can look at the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, we can look at the Census Bureau. Most importantly to me, the legal services and the COPS program are areas that I hope that we're able to raise to additional levels of funding. The state and local grant programs also take a significant decrease off of what we would hope that they could be. But I want to focus a little bit of my comment on the fact that in the full committee there were a number of non-financial items added to the bill. One related to firearms, another related to swimming pool regulations for the disabled, and there are always going to be disagreements around regulatory issues. But I'm not sure that this bill is the appropriate place. In fact, I would suggest that this bill is not the appropriate place to try to reconcile those issues. And I'm sure that as we move through, there will be additional inputs as to how we might deal with this question. But let me talk in some detail for a minute about some of the great initiatives that I think we were able to come to agreement on. And again, I want to thank the chairman and his staff. For our country and for my caucus, there's nothing more important than manufacturing, and to see the Manufacturing Extension Partnership at $128 million, also with a special carve-out for the National Innovative Marketplace, a web-like portal that will help our manufacturers compete for manufacturing initiatives at the federal level. I think it's very important. $21 million was requested by the President and met in this bill for the advanced manufacturing technology. And it also, we provide $149 million to the National Science Foundation for their advanced manufacturing initiative. We continue a program authorized under the American Competes Act that we funded last year to help small manufacturers bring technology on to the plant floor. And I would note that the chairman held as his last hearing, a hearing on manufacturing that I think really brought light to the subject of what the country can and needs to do in terms of helping our manufacturers compete with competitors abroad in much larger countries that are trying to overtake us in terms of manufacturing. I'd like to personally thank the chairman for fully funding the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House, which has taken the lead in this neuroscience initiative that has been a bipartisan agreement to really try to build a collaboration of federal agencies focused on some of the challenges that we have in terms of brain research, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, addiction, which is a big issue for the chairman of our full committee and Chairman Rogers and for many of the people that we represent. There are all types of issues related to dramatic brain injury affecting our veterans. So this collaboration is critically important, and I want to thank the chairman for fully funding that office, which is leading this effort, and the other important work that it does. There's a lot more that I could say. Let me conclude, however, because we're going to spend a long time on the floor, and I'll have plenty of chances to speak, by talking about the Youth Mentoring Initiative, which funds a variety of national groups that do work, but I think the shining light at the very top of the pyramid is the Boys and Girls Club, with some 4,000 clubs all across our country on all of our military bases and also in sovereign Native American reservations and lands, working with over 4 million young people. But along with Big Brothers Big Sisters and a number of other organizations, work to help American youth move in positive directions in their lives. So I think that the bill that we bring to the House, even though it is not the bill in every respect that I would bring, and obviously there's room for improvement, and that's part of the process that we'll go through on the floor and in conference. This is a bill that was had the complete unanimous bipartisan support out of subcommittee and was voice voted out of the full committee, and I am happy to join my colleague, the chairman, as we present it now for House action. I thank you, and I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia.
I recognize Mr. Rogers, chairman of the full committee, at such time he may use.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for as much time as he shall consume.
I thank the chairman for yielding the time, and I rise in strong support of this bill. This bill, the first for fiscal 13, marks one of the earliest starts to the appropriations process in recent memory, which is a good sign for moving all 12 bills before the September 30 end of the fiscal year. I look forward to an open and transparent process as we consider each of the bills, staying faithful to our commitment to smart, reduced levels of spending to help do our part in controlling the federal deficit. I want to especially commend Chairman Wolf, Ranking Member Fatah, and the members of the subcommittee, and my colleague and Ranking Member Norm Dix, and all of the staff who've had hard work invested in this bill. The Appropriations Committee, the overall committee, has held more than 100 hearings and briefings since January, which helps us determine the best use of limited tax dollars that we must spread out over a great number of vital federal programs, services, and agencies. The Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Bill is in line with the House-passed budget resolution, totals $51.1 billion, which is $1.6 billion below current level and below the pre-stimulus, pre-bailout level of 2008. Within this total, the committee prioritized programs and services that, one, protect our people from threats at home, abroad, and in cyberspace, two, that maintain the competitiveness of American industry and businesses, and three, that encourage the scientific research that has kept America at the forefront of the world in innovation. Some of these critical investments include $8.3 billion for the FBI, $468 million for the International Trade Administration, $830 million for the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and $2.4 billion for the Drug Enforcement Agency. In addition, this bill includes various provisions to promote freedom and liberty, while also fulfilling our moral obligation to the most vulnerable among us. The bill helps to uphold our Second Amendment rights, prevent violence against women, help victims of trafficking and missing and exploited children, and bring under control our country's fastest-growing drug threat, the abuse of prescription drugs, which the CDC has now labeled a national epidemic. We were able to fund these programs at adequate, responsible levels while cutting spending, terminating 37 duplicative, unnecessary, or lower priority programs. Not all of these decisions were easy to make, and I know many of my colleagues will have amendments to offer as we debate the bill. But I am proud of the work that this committee and this subcommittee has done to ensure responsibility and sustainability in these federal budgets, while making important reductions that curtail unnecessary overhead and wasteful inefficiencies. This bill makes judicious and sensible investments in programs that make America the great nation she is, an America that's safe and secure, an America that leads the way in scientific development and innovation, and an America that helps get its people back to work. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I thank the chairman for yielding, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
I'd like to yield as much time as the gentleman may need. The ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Washington State.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for as much time as you shall consume.
Mr. Speaker, I thank Ranking Member Fatah for yielding to me and for his hard work on this important bill. As we begin the floor consideration of this first of the 2013 appropriations bills, I would like to state as a preface that I regret the majority's decision to not abide by the Bipartisan Control Act, reducing the overall allocation for fiscal year 2013 by an additional $19 billion, which I think is both unnecessary and economically unwise. I believe the reduced discretionary allocation in the Ryan budget threatens to stall economic growth and job creation, and in the near term, it introduces uncertainty in our appropriation process that it might imperil our ability to produce these bills in a timely manner. That said, I remain committed to working collaboratively with the majority as we continue through the appropriations process this year, because I remain cautiously optimistic that this reduced allocation is merely temporary. At the end of the process, I believe the House and Senate will come to an agreement that reflects the Budget Control Act, rather than the level of $1.028 trillion that is based on the Ryan budget. With regard to the bill before us, I want to thank Chairman Wolf, Ranking Member Fatah, Chairman Rogers, and their staffs for their hard work on this bill. The majority worked closely with our side to put this bill together, and there were many issues on which we were able to reach agreement. While the level of funding in this bill may not be as low as a strict proportional reduction based on the Ryan budget, it is nevertheless not adequate to meet the needs in some areas. In comparison, the CJS bill in the other body has passed through committee with only one dissenting vote, and it is $731 million higher than the House allocation. Clearly, there is significant bipartisan support for this higher allocation. The House bill contains several funding levels that will be difficult for Democrats to support. The COPS hiring program is cut by 76%, even as state and local budgets continue to recover from historic losses in revenue. The Legal Services Corporation is also cut when it should be getting an increase, and that has been proposed by the President and supported in the other body. I'm also concerned that some important NOAA programs have been cut, in part to pay for the necessary new satellites. While I support the development and deployment of new satellites, it is important that we find a way to pay for them without making such drastic reductions in other important NASA programs. Let me state there were some very positive aspects of this bill. In particular, I want to thank the Chairman and Ranking Member for funding the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Fund at this year's enacted level, and for once again funding an increase to the Mitchell Act program. These are vitally important programs in the Pacific Northwest. I'm also pleased that the subcommittee mark contains $6.4 million for research in ocean acidification. The measurable increase in acidity in the world's oceans is already having an economic effect on the shellfish industry in the Pacific Northwest, interfering with the formation of the shells of oysters, mussels, clams, and other organisms such as phytoplanktons. I also appreciate that this bill provides significant increases for our federal law enforcement agencies, especially an additional $23 million for the FBI to investigate cyber intrusions. The bill also includes an important increase in funding for Youth Mentoring Program, which provides crucial support to at-risk youth in underserved communities and also to military kids, many of whom are struggling to adapt to the multiple deployments of one or both parents. And I want to echo the words of Ranking Member Fatah about the Boys and Girls Club of America. I find that the Boys and Girls Club have been one of the outstanding organizations and have done so much to help youth with their after-school programs. I thank the gentleman again for yielding to me, and I yield back the balance of my time to Mr. Fatah. Thank you.
Thank you. I would, if the Chairman, do you have anyone at this point? I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Virginia.
Recognize the Chairman of the Full Committee of Science, Congressman Hall.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for
As
such time as he may consume.
Of course, rise in support of H.R. 5326, Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies FY 2013 Appropriations Act. This bill includes over $30 billion for 4 key agencies under the Science, Space, and Technology Committee's jurisdiction: the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, National Science Foundation, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's a very strong bill, and I want to commend the gentleman from Virginia, Chairman Wolf, for his continued passionate support for science and space for these issues in a very challenging fiscal environment. Mr. Wolf's a true champion of science, and this bill is reflective of that. I also appreciate Chairman Wolf's work to address my concerns and our concerns and priorities as Chairman of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and want to highlight a few specific areas of importance to me and to us in this bill. With regards to NASA, this legislation recognizes the budget realities that we must confront by responsibly imposing measured reductions across the agency's portfolio. Importantly, this bill maintains the development of a new heavy-lift launch system and crew capsule. It maintains a healthy space science enterprise, continues to support innovative aeronautics research, and funds the administration commercial crew program at the authorized level of $500 million. Our committee will continue to provide oversight on the commercial crew program and work for the appropriations and the appropriators to support a program that has the best chance to succeed on schedule, with appropriate safeguards for the crew and with the best use of taxpayers' dollars. With regard to the National Science Foundation, the modest increase for the foundation is appropriate. As basic research and development play a critical role in our economic success, I strongly encourage NSF to broadly use this funding for fundamental research, which keeps the United States at the very leading edge of discovery, and not to blur this essential role with other initiatives that are best left to the private sector. Chairman Wolf has also worked to sustain the programs of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, that directly benefit our nation's competitiveness. The critical link between fundamental measurement science and our economic successes allows NIST to innovate new ways to help U.S. companies excel within a global marketplace and create high-paying jobs. With respect to NOAA, I thank Chairman Wolf for his continued strong support and oversight of NOAA's satellite programs and for his efforts to restore balance to NOAA and research portfolio. The bill does this in part by redirecting the administration's proposed significant increases for climate science to higher priority weather research that will help to protect lives and property through improved severe weather forecasting. This topic is very important to all regions of our nation, and most recently to Northeast Texas, where an outbreak of tornadoes and severe weather in April caused significant damages to homes and properties, including in my home county in the little city of Royse City. At this time, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record my communications to you, Mr. Chairman, in April regarding these weather research priorities. I hope to work with you as the bill moves to conference to preserve and enhance this particular NOAA priority. I thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman's request is covered by General Leave. He yields back. Thank you. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from the great state of Ohio, who is a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee.
Okay. Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank Ranking Member Fatah for granting me this time, and Mr. Speaker, I reluctantly rise today to oppose the fiscal year 13 Commerce, Justice, State, and Related Agencies Appropriation Bill, but I surely want to commend Chairman Wolf and Ranking Member Fatah for their truly diligent work on this bill. The bipartisanship showed during the markup of the bill was remarkable in today's political climate, and a tribute to both members' willingness to compromise in order to move legislation forward, doing the work we were sent here to do. I would also like to thank the appropriations staff for their hard work on the first fiscal 13 appropriation bill the House will consider. From my perspective, the appropriations staff is the hardest working committee staff in Congress and deserves recognition for all their efforts. Mr. Speaker, the legislation we are considering today fails to make the necessary investments to promote economic growth and jobs across this country. It also fails to provide sufficient resources for law enforcement officials, particularly local law enforcement, as they face difficulties from austerity cutbacks by state and local governments. The total funding for this bill is the result of the Republican leadership breaking the agreement made in the Budget Control Act. The agreed-upon funding levels were an attempt to get our fiscal house in order in a fair and balanced way. It is unfortunate that the Republicans are going back on their word and slashing funding for programs that create jobs and support law enforcement. Importantly, funding cutbacks at the Economic Development Administration failed to meet President Obama's request for that important initiative to strengthen America's manufacturing base. In addition, the underlying bill fails to provide state and local law enforcement with the federal support they deserve. Cutting nearly $400 million from state and local programs at the Department of Justice is not only unacceptable, but dangerous in my view. A particular concern for me is the lack of resources provided to meet the President's request for additional funding to combat financial and mortgage fraud. The President requested additional resources for the FBI, the Criminal Division, Civil Rights Division, and U.S. Attorneys, but less than half of the funding requested for the FBI is provided in this bill. No other funding is provided to investigate and prosecute financial and mortgage fraud. Might I ask the gentleman for an additional 30 seconds?
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
Recognized for additional 30.
I thank the gentleman. Let me just state for the record, the average return on investment for one corporate fraud agent was approximately $54 million over the last 3 years in fines and restitutions that they get back because of their work. What a tremendous return on investment that is for every taxpayer dollar, and getting it from combating financial and mortgage fraud is absolutely makes total common sense. Finally, I oppose the provision in the bill that repeals existing prohibitions on the reductions in force at NASA. There was an agreement we reached as a Congress on how to do that. This bill does not conform to that restructuring proposal. For these reasons, I oppose the bill in its current form, and again commend Chairman Wolf and Congressman Fatah, the ranking member, for bringing us to this point, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Virginia.
I recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I rise today for the purpose of a colloquy with the chairman to discuss the importance of assessing our global competitiveness in manufacturing through an online tool that will calculate the cost of manufacturing in the United States versus overseas. I'd like to recognize and thank the chairman for including the online manufacturing tool in last year's Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Act. On the Energy and Commerce Committee, we've been working to find ways to highlight the shift in U.S. manufacturing competitiveness. According to a recent analysis by the Boston Consulting Group, China's overwhelming manufacturing cost advantage is shrinking, and by 2015, the cost gap between the United States and China will virtually close. Companies need to reassess their manufacturing strategy with a rigorous analysis of the cost for manufacturing overseas compared to the cost in the United States. I'm excited by the online tool that will be developed by the Department of Commerce to assist U.S. companies in determining the cost of manufacturing overseas, and I commend the chairman for his work in promoting U.S. competitiveness.
Gentleman, would you yield?
I will.
I want to thank you, Mr. Kinzinger, for your work and for bringing up this important topic. The Department of Commerce can play a pivotal role in educating companies on the benefits of manufacturing in the U.S. We need to ensure that the department is using innovative tools such as online calculators to assist companies. This online tool has the potential to not only educate companies but also provide clarity in the advantages and disadvantages of manufacturing in the U.S. Also, I think people ought to know this is not only a tool, this is almost a moral issue too. We just went through and had hearings with Congressman Chris Smith when the Congress was away. This country of China had Chen and beat up his wife and did a lot of other things. So not only is it this issue, it is a moral issue. And Apple, if you have an iPad, it's made in China. iPhone, made in China. iPod, made in China. And those jobs ought to be coming home. So we also have language in there to provide for grants to repatriate, to bring these jobs back. China is in trouble. They have a one-child policy. 50 million men cannot find wives. They have corruption in the military, and they are unraveling. And this is a great opportunity using this tool, but just for the American manufacturers to come home, to come back to the United States. So thank you, gentlemen, for raising the issue. And yield back.
And reclaiming my time, thank you, and I look forward to it. I appreciate your leadership on this issue, and I yield back.
Well, I'm glad there's a recognition of the importance of manufacturing, and the chairman has done a yeoman's job in making sure that we, in a number of ways, attack this. But I'd like to yield 3 minutes to my colleague on the committee, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Serrano.
From New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for the time. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Chairman Wolf and Ranking Member Fatah for their work, but especially for their continued desire to work together, to work in a bipartisan fashion to bring about this bill that's on the floor today. Now, for those of us on our side, we know that there are folks on the other side that speak only about budget cuts. But when it comes to Chairman Wolf, there is a desire to balance the desire of having those budget cuts along with making sure that these bills, in fact, accomplish servicing the American people. And so I stand ready with the ranking member to be supportive of this bill with the understanding there are two things that have to happen that are very serious to that final vote. One of them is a continued commitment that as this process goes along, we will work to make the bill better than it is now, and that we will work to remedy those situations that exist within the bill now that need to be taken care of. And secondly, that in the large and perhaps vast amendment process that we will have, which is a good sign of being able to have this kind of an open rule, the bill doesn't get brought back to a situation where some of us cannot be supportive of it. And I single out, for instance, just two agencies that need betterment and not necessarily to be destroyed, and that's the Census Bureau and the Legal Services Corporation. Both of those agencies serve a vital purpose in our society. They come under heavy attack on so many occasions, and I think it's important to know that many of us will be looking to make sure that we don't step back even further than the bill speaks to now on these two agencies, and as I said before, that we work jointly to make the bill even better than it is today. But understanding fully the work that Chairman Wolf and Chairman Fatah have done during this period of time is important to me and important to many members of this committee and of the whole House. And so with that in mind, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia. Gentleman from Chairman.
I recognize the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Yoder, for such time as he may consume.
Gentleman from Kansas is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I rise today in support of the Commerce, Justice, and Science 2013 Appropriations Bill, our first appropriations bill of the upcoming fiscal year, and I'd like to commend the Chairman, members of both parties in their efforts to put together some bipartisan reforms in this legislation, and also to find ways to reduce spending to get our national debt back in line. Like many Americans, I'm concerned about the national debt crisis facing this country, almost $16 trillion now in national debt that we've racked up that is a factor now in economic decisions we have to make every day in this country, and it will be a burden that we'll pass on to our kids and grandkids for generations to come. So any opportunities that we have to reduce spending, find ways to get our budget back in line, should be supported by this Congress as we attempt to become fiscally responsible. We've had a spending epidemic in this city for far too long, many times not finding any cure on this House floor and no support for reducing spending. And so I want to commend the committee for actually reducing spending in this legislation below the 2008 levels, below the pre-stimulus levels, to try to put us back on a track towards fiscal responsibility. It used to be in Washington the idea that a spending cut was not getting the amount of increase that you requested. You requested a 3% increase. You only got a 2% increase. An agency felt they were cut. And so we're changing that on its head. We're changing the course of business in this town and actually reducing spending from one year to the next, and it's a good first start. Certainly there are many miles to go and additional reductions to make in all areas, but this legislation heads us in the right direction. And it does so in a responsible way. Not only does the legislation reduce spending, but it reprioritizes spending to those things that have the greatest value to the American people and makes the greatest impact on the economic challenges our country is facing. Not only does it increase support for the FBI, different law enforcement agencies, but it also supports the National Science Foundation with an increase in spending, the Commerce Department and our trade and patent offices, those types of bottleneck agencies that make a difference on whether small business owners, entrepreneurs can create jobs and grow and expand the economy. So we need to get Washington out of the way and create these efficiencies, and this legislation goes in the right direction towards cleaning up some of those problems and supporting the programs that have the greatest impact by reprioritizing spending. So if you're focused like I am on reducing spending, and like many Americans are, on this national debt crisis, but you also want to see Washington spend less resources on endless bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., and more on the types of programs that help Americans back home, this is the right type of legislation. It strikes the right balance. My hope is that the two political parties can work together to support this legislation. Let's get it moving, and let's start producing the types of priorities and the types of bills that the American people want to see us continue to work on, continue to see us be productive on, working together to reduce the national debt, reduce spending, but finding ways to reprioritize spending on those things that matter most. I'd like to commend the Chairman and the committee for working together and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I would note that the Chairman and I are both were in a significant minority on this floor and voting for the Bowles-Simpson. So we proposal, so we're for a balanced fiscal approach, but we also know that we have to make important investments. I want to yield to the gentleman, Mr. Keating, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to, I believe, enter into a colloquy on an important matter related to marine science.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I rise to engage in a colloquy with the chairman. I thank the gentleman from Virginia for his leadership and his willingness to preserve resources for marine mammal stranding response in the fiscal year 2000 Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Bill, and I understand that the House Report 112-463 includes language encouraging NOAA to maintain funding for the essential marine mammal stranding grants. The competitive Prescott Marine Mammal Rescue Assistant Grant Program is a cost-effective, community-oriented program that works with stranded mammals, enables the collection of data to prevent future strandings, and deals with the practical dilemma communities face with beach dolphins weighing 200 to 500 pounds, as well as with right whales. Based on conversations with the chairman and ranking member, I will not be offering my amendment specifying this grant at this time. I look forward, rather, to working with the gentleman from Virginia towards inserting this language in conference, and with that, I yield back my time.
I want to thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for raising the issue, and I promise we will work with him and our colleagues in the Senate during the conference to ensure an adequate level of funding for this program.
I reserve the balance of my time.
I yield back to Bill. We have no further speakers. I yield back the balance of time.
Just a second here. Does gentleman from Pennsylvania yield back the balance of his time?
Yeah, I have one final speaker, and that's
the gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
I'd like to yield to my fraternity brother and the gentleman representing the great state of Michigan, Mr. Clark, for 2 minutes to talk about the importance of science in STEM-related education.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Wolf, Ranking Member Fatah, members of the greatest fraternity there is. As a member of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee that authorizes the National Science Foundation, I wanted to thank the leaders of this budget for fully funding the National Science Foundation's education budget according to the President's recommendation. This is going to help us provide more education to our young people, especially youth from the inner city who very rarely get a chance to be educated in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because this is the only way, one of the most powerful ways that our young people can get the education and training that they need to get good-paying jobs. This funding in this budget will help centers such as the Detroit Science Center better reach out to these young people. And we're looking forward to the soon reopening of the Detroit Science Center. And again, we thank this budget for the support of the National Science Foundation, which will be able to help provide resources on a competitive basis to centers around the country, such as the Detroit Science Center. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia controls the time.
I'll reserve.
Reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
On behalf of the Democrats, we yield back the balance of our time. We have no further speakers.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back. Gentleman from Virginia.
We yield back.
He yields back as well. All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. During consideration of the bill for amendment, the chair may accord priority and recognition to a member offering an amendment who has caused it to be printed in the designated place in the congressional record. Those amendments will be considered read. The clerk will read.
Be it enacted that the following sums are appropriated out of any money in the Treasury for the fiscal year 2013. Title I, Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, Operations and Administration, $467,737,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
I rise to offer an amendment on this paragraph.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Peters of Michigan, page 3, line 10, after the dollar amount insert increased by $9 million. Page 65, line 1, after the dollar amount insert reduced by $17 million. Page 76, line 16, after the dollar amount insert increased by $1,790,000.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes for his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of talk here in Washington about the need to cut our budget deficits, and while that is certainly true, we also need to be talking about another deficit, and that's our country's trade deficit. Last year, the United States ran a trade deficit of $558 billion. If you look just at the trade in goods, this number jumps to an astounding $737 billion. According to a recent report by the Economic Policy Institute, the growth in the U.S. trade deficit with China alone has led to the loss of almost 3 million American jobs in the last 10 years. Too often, the U.S. opens its markets to foreign competition without reciprocal access. And while we play by the rules here in the United States, other countries impose unfair tariffs, duties, and technical barriers, and even use techniques like currency manipulation to game international trade rules. China aggressively uses trade policies, including currency manipulation, to protect and subsidize their domestic industries while undermining American companies. In response to the World Trade Organization case that the United States brought against China, the Chinese government recently imposed new retaliatory duties on American-made vehicles, which are clearly in violation of WTO requirements. Additionally, China consistently advances policies to force technology transfers from non-Chinese companies and obtain the intellectual property that drives these advanced technologies. China has also used these policies to help gain an advantage in a number of different industries, including wind turbines and water purification. Given the aggressive actions taken by China and other countries, we simply cannot afford not to use every tool at our disposal to combat unfair trade practices. This is why Representative Michoud and I have joined with our colleagues from across the aisle, Representatives McCotter and LaTourette, to put forward a bipartisan amendment to fully fund the new Interagency Trade Enforcement Center, or ITEC. President Obama created ITEC to enhance the administration's capabilities to proactively challenge unfair trade practices around the world, including in China. ITEC represents a new, aggressive, whole-of-government approach to addressing unfair trade practices and will serve as the primary forum within the federal government for executive departments and agencies to coordinate enforcement of international and domestic trade rules. It is now up to us here in Congress to fund ITEC and give it the teeth it needs to aggressively attack unfair and illegal foreign practices. It is certainly a step in the right direction that the Appropriations Committee provided $15 million of the requested $26 million in funding for ITEC to get it off the ground. But with our nation running a $500 billion trade deficit, now is not the time for half measures. We must do everything possible to level the playing field for American workers and American companies. Our budget-neutral, bipartisan amendment will fully fund ITEC by making a small reduction in the cross-agency support at NASA, an item funded at $2.84 billion. This amounts to a reduction of less than 0.6% for this item. And while I certainly support NASA, this reduction does not come from their core budget items of education, exploration, or aeronautics. American workers are the best in the world, and they can outcompete anybody, but Congress must pass legislation to ensure that they compete on a level playing field. Whether you believe in aggressively moving forward with additional trade agreements, or you believe that we need to rethink American trade policy, we should all agree that we cannot and must not let foreign governments cheat, because when they do, American workers and American firms lose. A vote against this common-sense amendment is a vote to allow China and other nations to continue gaming international trade laws. Stand up for American workers, fully fund ITEC, and vote yes on the Peters, McCotter, Michoud, and LaTourette amendment. I yield back.
The gentleman from Michigan yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady. I rise in support of the bipartisan Peters-McCotter-Michaud-La Tourette amendment to fully fund the Interagency Trade Enforcement Center. Common sense is afoot. I know the novelty is striking to many in this chamber. However, let us start by examining some of the premises behind this necessary amendment. The first, despite what many claim, we do not live in a period of time where we have free trade. We live in a period of time of negotiated trade. And as such, trade must be reciprocal, not suicidal. The United States, throughout our lifetimes, has been the economic engine of the world. It has remained so because we are a free people, free to engage in contracts, free to engage in research and development, free to innovate, free to manufacture, free to show the world what we can achieve economically as well as politically. What this amendment will do is something that is a long time coming. It is to treat other nations' unfair trade practices as a comprehensive problem. No more whack-a-mole, no more pretending the problem doesn't exist. What we need to do is quite simply take a root and branch approach to those mercantilist countries whose own oppression leads to the lack of necessary freedom for their people to be able to achieve and compete with the United States. A refusal to support this amendment simply shows that we will continue to go on the same old tired path of watching the best workers and the best entrepreneurs in the world be cheated out of their pursuit of prosperity, and us all be cheated out of a healthier, more vibrant economy. I urge my colleagues to embrace this bipartisanship, this common sense, so that together we can strike a blow for free and fair trade and protect American jobs by allowing for free and fair competition amongst nations. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
The bill